You must be forgetting again, sweetie. You already took your meds this morning. I handed them to you myself. The sentence landed like a knife each time it was said. I blinked at my mother across the kitchen counter. Her voice was calm, syrupy, even. But something in her tone made my stomach coil. I don't remember, I muttered, staring down at the orange pill bottle in my hand. My name printed neatly across the label. My dosage. My prescription. But the contents never felt quite right. And somehow, for the past 3 months, I hadn't been able to shake the fog in my head. I woke up tired. I felt anxious for no reason. I had dizzy spells that made the walls of our quiet house feel like a spinning amusement park ride. I cried at things that weren't sad. I forgot things, important things. Like my shift at work. Like if I'd eaten. Like entire conversations. The worst part? No one believed me. Not even my psychiatrist, Dr. Harper. She's probably just under a lot of stress, Mrs. Temple, he had said, seated across from my mother during my last visit. Yes, my mother insisted on coming to all of them. It's not uncommon for young women her age to manifest symptoms this way. Perhaps we increased the dosage just slightly. And so we did. And things got worse. Before this, I was stable. I wasn't perfect, but I had things under control. Therapy had been working. I had a routine, a job I liked, friends. I was even thinking of moving out of my childhood home. For the first time in years, I'd begun to believe maybe I wasn't broken. But then my mom started helping me with my meds again. It's easier if I organize them for you, she'd say, standing by the bathroom mirror with her little weekly pill organizer and a sharp, too bright smile. You don't need to worry about counting or remembering. I've got it handled. That was the phrase. I've got it handled. I should have said no. I should have pushed back. But when you've grown up being told that your brain lies to you, that your thoughts are unreliable, you stop trusting yourself. You let other people drive. Even when you feel like something is deeply wrong. It was my cousin Ryan who first said something. He visited one afternoon while my mom was running errands. I had bags under my eyes and trembled trying to lift the kettle. "Allie," he said carefully, "are you okay? You don't look like yourself." I remember blinking at him, trying to push through the haze. "I think my meds aren't working right." He frowned. "Did your doctor change something?" "No," I said slowly. "Just the dosage. Mom said the doctor approved it." Ryan tilted his head. "Did you see him approve it?" The question stopped me cold, because no, I hadn't. Not directly. Mom always spoke to Dr. Harper before our sessions. Said it was better that way. Ryan stayed for an hour. Then another. He asked to see my pill bottles. I showed him the organizer Mom used. And then he asked to see the actual prescription label. That's when he noticed something. "Allie, this isn't what I take. This isn't the same generic. Look, yours looks different." That night, I waited until Mom went to bed. I dug through the bathroom cabinet until I found what Ryan pointed out. 2 bottles. One with my name, one with hers. And they weren't the same. One of them wasn't even mine. I held them side by side. My fingers trembled. I looked at the capsules. They weren't the same shape or color. Something inside me snapped awake. She'd been giving me her pills. Pills I wasn't prescribed. Pills that could alter my mood, my cognition, my sense of reality. I sat on the cold tile floor, gripping the 2 bottles like lifelines. And I cried. But not because I was sad, because suddenly I realized I hadn't been losing my mind. She had. Been switching my medication on purpose. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I placed everything back where I found it. I wiped my tears. I waited. Because if she wanted me to doubt myself, I'd make sure the next time I said something, No one would doubt me. Not ever again. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, every sound amplified. The hum of the fridge, the creak of pipes, the rhythmic ticking of the hallway clock, all of it seemed to synchronize with the pounding in my chest. She'd done it. My own mother. She'd gaslit me for months, made me question my sanity, and all the while she had been swapping my medication with hers. Not to help me, not to protect me, but to control me. And she almost won. The next morning, I acted normal. Or, at least, normal enough. "Sleep okay, sweetie?" she asked cheerfully as I poured myself coffee. I nodded, careful not to meet her eyes. "Yeah, just tired." She handed me my morning dose without blinking. Same little plastic cup, same coaxing tone, but I didn't take it. I carried it with me back to my room, locked the door, opened my desk drawer, and tucked it inside a small Ziploc bag I'd labeled the night before. Evidence number 1. I started documenting everything. Every pill she handed me, I hid. I collected them in labeled bags, dated, photographed. I logged them on a spreadsheet Ryan helped me build. I even began secretly recording our conversations using a voice memo app on my phone. "Did you take your meds this morning?" she'd ask. "Uh-huh," I'd lie, voice flat, pressing record under the table. "You're doing much better since the adjustment," she'd smile, hand on my arm like I was a fragile little thing. Meanwhile, I was doing worse than ever. My brain still struggled to recalibrate, even without taking the pills. The withdrawal symptoms were awful: nausea, dizziness, cold sweats. But at least I knew why now. And every time the room spun or my stomach lurched, I told myself, "You are not crazy. You are healing." Ryan came over more often. He pretended to bring me homework help, sometimes just his laptop and takeout, so Mom wouldn't question it. But we used those nights to analyze the audio clips, compare pill colors, and draft emails to a new psychiatrist, one she didn't know. "I've got a friend from college who works at a lab," he told me one night. "We can get a toxicology, breakdown of the pills you've been given. If the dosage doesn't match your prescription, it's hard proof." "What if it's not enough?" I whispered. "What if she still finds a way to twist it?" He paused, looked me dead in the eye. "Then we twist it back harder." It was around week 3 when she started to suspect something was off. She knocked on my door one afternoon, her voice tight. "Allie, can you open up?" I opened the door a crack. "Yeah?" "I noticed your energy's changed," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Are you taking your meds properly?" I forced a soft laugh. "Of course. Why?" "You've just been acting different. I don't want you relapsing." Relapsing. That word used to terrify me. Now it just made me angry. "I feel fine," I said. "Better, actually." She stared at me for a moment too long, then smiled. Too big, too bright. "Good. That's what we want." That night I called Dr. June Lamont, Ryan's referral. It was a risk, but I was desperate. We talked for nearly an hour over a secure line. I told her everything. My history, the meds, my suspicions, the audio, the bottles. She listened, really listened. "Allie," she said gently, "you need to understand something. What you're describing isn't just emotional abuse. It may qualify as medical negligence, possibly even criminal tampering." My breath caught. "Criminal?" "Yes," she said. "If your mother has knowingly administered medications you were not prescribed, especially ones that could affect your cognition, she's crossed several lines." "But she's my mother," I said, barely audible, which makes it all the more important that we proceed carefully and protect you first. Over the next few days, Dr. Lamont connected me to a discreet legal aid service. She arranged for blood work to be taken at a separate clinic. Every result lined up with our theory. My current blood levels didn't match my prescribed medications. And all the while, Mom kept smiling, kept handing me her pills like she was doing me a favor, kept pretending this house was safe, until the morning I came downstairs and she said flatly, "You haven't been taking your medication." I froze. Her voice wasn't sweet anymore. "What?" "I know," she hissed. "I counted. I always count. Don't lie to me." I met her eyes for the first time in weeks, and I didn't blink. "I'm not lying. But you are. And I've got the proof now." She went pale, and I walked out the front door, quietly, calmly, for the last time. The air outside felt different that morning, crisper, lighter, as if the world had finally shifted into a new season, one where I wasn't just surviving inside my mother's house, but waking up outside of it. Ryan picked me up 2 blocks away. I didn't want her seeing his car in the driveway. The moment I got in, he locked the doors and handed me a hot coffee. "You ready for this?" he asked. I looked straight ahead, my voice low. More than ever. We drove straight to the office of the legal advocate Dr. Lamont connected me with, Elena Cho, a firm but soft-spoken attorney who specialized in medical coercion and elder family abuse. She listened as I recounted everything from the beginning. The altered pills, the hidden prescriptions, the audio files, the withdrawal symptoms, the forged trust in therapy rooms, the psychological erosion that stretched years beyond these last few months. "She's been doing this since you were a teenager?" Elena asked. I nodded. At first it was little things, convincing doctors I was unstable, making me switch therapists if they got too close, controlling my appointments. But lately, it escalated. She made me feel like I was hallucinating. Elena's face tightened. "That's not just abuse. That's a form of factitious disorder imposed on another. Munchausen by proxy in some cases." Hearing it named sent a chill down my spine. "She isolated you under the pretense of caregiving," she continued. "That's a legally and psychologically documented form of manipulation. The evidence you've collected, especially the audio, and toxicology, can be presented to support an emergency injunction." "Injunction?" I asked. She nodded. "Restraining order. You're not safe with her, Allie. And frankly, I want to recommend criminal charges, but we'll need to play this carefully." That night, I stayed at Ryan's place. He cleared out the guest room for me, even added blackout curtains and a desk lamp. "I know it's not much," he said, scratching his head, "but it's yours." It felt strange being in a room where I didn't have to check the door 3 times before sleeping, where I didn't hide my phone, where no one slipped pills into my orange juice or logged into my therapy portal behind my back. It felt like I could finally breathe. Still, I didn't sleep, because part of me knew. This wasn't over. She wasn't going to let me go that easily. The next day, my phone started ringing. First it was Mom, then it was the landline from home, then her number, but with no caller ID. Then, blocked, then a voicemail. "Allie, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is going too far. Come home, we'll talk. You're confused, honey. You're not well. You need help. You need me." Click. I deleted it, then saved the backup. By Friday, the emergency injunction was filed. By Monday, Mom had been served. Ryan was home with me when it happened. We watched from the second-floor window as the process server handed her the envelope. At the front gate, she didn't even flinch, just took it, closed the door, and vanished back into her pristine suburban kitchen. But within minutes, the texts came. "You're making a mistake. You don't understand what you're doing. Don't throw away your family over some misunderstanding. Do you want to ruin my life? And finally, you're sick. I was only trying to help you." Later that week, I received a strange email. It was from an old therapist of mine, Dr. Carla Brenner. I hadn't seen her in years. My mother made me stop seeing her when I was 19, said she wasn't a good fit, but Dr. Brenner's message was short. Hi, Allie. I saw your name come up in a public filing. I just wanted you to know. Back then, I suspected your mother was interfering with your treatment. I tried to confront her. She pulled you out of therapy the next week. I'm so sorry. If you ever need a statement or support, I'm here. I stared at the screen for a long time before I could breathe again. It hadn't just been in my head. Someone else had seen it. On Thursday, I met with Dr. Lamont in person. I have one more thing to show you, I said, sitting across from her with a small flash drive in my hand. I've been sorting through old family files, digital backups, things my mom thought I wouldn't remember how to access. And I found this. I plugged the flash drive into her laptop and opened a folder labeled simply, Journal Backups. Inside were PDFs. Some were mine, therapy journals from when I was 15, 16, 17. But they'd been edited, crossed out, rewritten. She changed them, I said. She exported my entries from my private journal app, and then edited the emotional entries to look erratic, rambling, paranoid. She was building a record that I was unstable. Dr. Lamont sat back slowly. She was creating a paper trail. I nodded, in case I ever tried to get away. I went back to Ryan's that night and lay in the guest room staring at the ceiling. Not crying, not shaking, just still. Because it was no longer a question of if I'd be believed. It was now a question of when I'd be ready to turn everything in, and when I'd finally confront her with the truth she never expected me to hold on to. The court hearing for the preliminary injunction was scheduled for the following Thursday. 7 days. 7 days until the world, her world, would hear what she'd done. 7 days until the facade cracked wide open, but she wasn't going down quietly. 2 days before the hearing, Ryan's landlord got a knock on the door. A concerned neighbor, someone who claimed I was an unstable young woman, dangerous, to myself and others, and likely off her meds. The woman left no name, no number, just a worried tone and a thinly veiled warning. You should be careful who you let stay under your roof. Ryan came home fuming. She's trying to discredit you again, he said. She's still playing puppet master even now. She doesn't know how to stop, I replied quietly. Control is the only language she knows. I reached into my backpack and pulled out the small recorder I'd carried every day. I had audio from that knock. Ryan's front porch camera caught her reflection in the storm glass. I want her to keep going, I whispered. Let her try everything. The more she digs, the deeper the hole gets. That same night, I received a message request on Facebook from a woman named Sharon Bowers. Hi, I'm not sure if this is the right Allie Temple, but if your mother is Sandra Temple, I think we need to talk. She used to mentor my daughter in a church counseling group. We had issues. I didn't know where else to turn. I just saw your name in a public filing, and something clicked. You're not the only one. My stomach dropped. We spoke for hours. Her daughter had been 19, recovering from anxiety. Sandra had offered to help organize her meds during their weekly church visits. Within a month, the girl was hospitalized, confused, volatile, unable to explain the sudden mental spiral. They never had proof. The doctors assumed it was just a breakdown. But now, Sharon was sure. My mother had a pattern. I wasn't her first. Bye. The next day, the house I'd once called home looked like a bunker. She'd closed the blinds, covered windows in foil, installed new security cameras. A neighbor even mentioned she'd called in to report a stalker, an ironic twist of the knife. But the best part? She didn't know what was coming. because I'd subpoenaed Dr. Brenner as a supporting witness, and Ryan and I had already pre-filed copies of the toxicology report, the voice recordings, and the altered journal entries. Elena, my lawyer, was confident. Her strategy is intimidation, she told me, stacking folders. But now you hold the facts, and facts don't shake under pressure. Just stay calm. Stay focused. The night before the hearing, I drove back to the house. Not to go inside, never again, but to stand at the end of the driveway. One last look. I watched the lights flicker behind the curtains. I could almost hear her voice again. You need me. You're not well. You'd fall apart without me. But none of those things were true. They were the echoes of a spell that no longer worked. And tomorrow, I'd say it in front of a judge. Out loud. With witnesses. With evidence. With my voice. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a prisoner in my own body. I felt like a woman about to burn down the house of lies she was raised in. The courthouse lobby smelled like bleach and paper. I sat on a hard plastic bench, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Ryan was beside me, silent but solid, his presence anchoring me as my mind swam between memory and what was about to happen. Could feel the weight of the flash drive in my coat pocket. Inside it was everything: audio, photos, lab results, digital backups, statements, truths carefully, painfully documented. My mother was in a room down the hall, probably adjusting her sweater and rehearsing another performance. Sandra Temple was nothing if not composed, controlled, a master of her own story, but this time, the script wasn't hers to write. The courtroom was quiet when we entered. Neutral walls, fluorescent lighting, a long wooden table between us. I didn't look at her as I sat across the aisle. I didn't need to. I could feel her gaze burning a hole into my cheek. That same look from my childhood. Disappointment dressed as love, poison disguised as protection. But I didn't flinch. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, called the room to order. My attorney, Elena, rose first. Your Honor, we're requesting a permanent restraining order against the respondent, Sandra Temple, based on extensive evidence of medical manipulation, psychological coercion, and intentional interference with the petitioner's mental health care and autonomy. My mother's attorney, a pale man with an eager tone, stood too quickly. My client maintains she acted out of concern for her daughter's well-being. The petitioner has a documented history of instability and poor decision-making. Mrs. Temple merely assisted in her care when others could not. Lies, familiar, polished, but they didn't hit the same. Not anymore. The first hour was about the evidence. Elena began with the toxicology, reports, how my blood levels showed medications I had never been prescribed. She played the audio files next. Sweetie, you already took your meds. I handed them to you myself. The courtroom was silent. The judge leaned forward slightly. Elena continued, listing dates, symptoms, and dosage records I'd tracked in secret. Each line a stitch in the pattern. Each fact cutting deeper into the illusion my mother worked so hard to maintain. Then came the journal edits. Dr. Lamont took the stand and explained the psychological effects of having one's narrative manipulated, how altered medical journals and voiced-out gaslighting can derail a person's entire sense of self. Then, Dr. Brenner. She testified that my mother had consistently redirected my therapy, that she'd once pulled me from sessions the moment I began expressing independence. She said, in no uncertain terms, it became clear that Sandra Temple saw Allie's mental health not as something to nurture, but as something to control. Then, it was my turn. I took the stand with trembling legs but steady breath, and I spoke, not just about the pills, or the lies, but about what it felt like, being slowly erased inside your own home. I told them about the days I couldn't get out of bed, thinking I was broken, when really my body was reacting to poison not meant for it. I told them about waking up in cold, sweats, unable to trust my memories, about crying on bathroom floors with no explanation but something's wrong, and I don't know what. I didn't cry on the stand. I didn't yell. I simply spoke the truth, clear, raw, and devastating. Then my mother took the stand, and the performance began. She played the role of loving martyr to perfection. Tears, shaky voice, careful phrasing. "I just wanted to help her," she whispered. She wasn't safe on her own. She painted me as the lost daughter, the fragile one, the girl who never grew up. And then, her fatal misstep. She was spiraling again, Your Honor. She even started recording me in secret. Elena leaned forward. "Did you just admit that the recordings are authentic?" My mother blinked, caught. Well, no further questions. By the end of the day, the judge did not issue a ruling. She called a recess and said she'd reconvene the next morning to deliver her decision. But I didn't need the verdict to know something had shifted. For the first time, people saw her. They didn't see the savior. They saw the saboteur. And when we walked out of that courtroom, the silence that had once followed me like a shadow had finally lifted. But the war wasn't over yet. She still had her claws in more than just my past. She had legal guardianship over parts of my medical records. She had access to financial accounts I hadn't realized were shared. She had pieces of me scattered through paperwork and signatures I'd been too young or too tired to question. And now it was time to take them back. The morning the judge issued the restraining order, I didn't feel victorious. I felt released. She wasn't allowed to contact me anymore, verbally, physically, or digitally. The judge had reviewed everything. The evidence, the recordings, the testimony. She granted the order without hesitation. But freedom was more than just physical distance. Freedom, I was learning, came down to paperwork. And my mother still had plenty of it wrapped around me like invisible chains. Elena met me later that afternoon in her office. She had a folder in one hand and a tight line in her jaw. "She's still listed as your medical proxy," she said. "Since you were 17. She never rescinded it," I blinked. "But I'm 26. She never had to remove it unless you filed to reassign. And you never knew to." I sat back, throat tightening. "So she could still..." Elena nodded. "She's had access to your mental health records, your prescriptions, even communication. Logs with doctors. We need to revoke everything, and we need to move fast." It was a week of red tape, petitions, hearings, visits to medical offices where I had to prove my own autonomy. One nurse even said, "But your mother's been so involved. Are you sure you want to change this?" "Yes," I said. "I'm sure." By Thursday, the records were sealed. New passwords set. My healthcare proxy reassigned to myself, and the old logs, showing years of questionable access, were printed and added to Elena's ever-growing file. It painted a pattern, a strategy, and something else we hadn't expected. Bank activity. Ryan and I sat cross-legged on the living room floor that night, poring over old banking records. Some I recognized. Tuition payments, rent, grocery bills. But some, I didn't. "Who's Clara's? Care?" I asked, pointing to a recurring $2,100 monthly charge. "Not familiar," Ryan muttered. He started typing. 10 minutes later, he looked up. His face had changed. "It's a psychiatric care facility," he said. "Private, expensive, in-network for a very limited list of insurance providers." I leaned closer. Was I ever enrolled? No. But guess who was? He turned the screen. Aunt Beth, my mother's estranged sister, diagnosed with bipolar disorder. In and out of care. Someone my mother had always said was a financial burden. And she'd been paying for Beth's care. With my money. Funds pulled from a trust my father had left for me before he died. Trust my mother was co-signer on until I turned 25, but I hadn't seen a cent. It took another week to unravel. Statements from the bank. A forensic accountant, referred by Elena. Dozens of pages of transactions, carefully disguised as tuition reimbursements, medical advances, living stipend adjustments. My mother had drained over $78,000 from the account over 4 years. Quietly, strategically, legally, almost. But one mistake stood out. A transfer dated 2 weeks after my 25th birthday. Illegally executed. Forged signature. It was small. Only $4,500. But it was enough. Enough for criminal charges. I stared at the document. Her name. My name. My signature. Only it wasn't mine. She used to sign permission slips for me, I said quietly, remembering. Muscle memory, Ryan added. She got cocky. Elena filed it with the Financial Fraud Division within the week. An investigation was opened. Quietly. Carefully. They didn't want her spooked, because once you start cornering someone like Sandra Temple, they don't wait around to be caught. They go scorched earth, and that's exactly what she did. 2 days later, Ryan's car tires were slashed, then his mailbox ripped off. Then I got a letter. No return address. Just scrawled handwriting inside. You always were the problem. You should have just taken the pills. It wasn't signed. But I didn't need it to be. We submitted it to the detective handling the financial case. They began compiling a file on harassment. But I knew something she didn't. I'd already installed a camera outside my new apartment, and the footage? Crystal clear. There she was, Sandra Temple, at 3:17 a.m., in a long coat and scarf, creeping toward the mailbox like a ghost in her own daughter's nightmares. That footage would be handed over next. But I wasn't done, because revenge, for me, wouldn't just be legal. It would be symbolic, and I'd already begun planning it, not to destroy her, but to make sure the world saw the woman she really was. Not the martyr, not the caretaker, but the architect of a carefully controlled nightmare she could no longer maintain. They used to say my mother could sell rain to a storm. She had that kind of charm. The manicured voice, the saintly posture. A woman who volunteered at church, brought soup to sick neighbors, and ran mental health support circles for struggling young women. A woman who played the part of the perfect caregiver so flawlessly, people clung to her praise like it was salvation, but masks always crack, and I was going to make sure hers shattered, publicly. The video footage of her vandalizing my mailbox wasn't just handed over to the police. It was also quietly uploaded to a private Google Drive link, a link shared with the lawyer, the detective, and a local reporter named Kendra Lee, who ran a small but fast-growing online news blog focused on corruption and community accountability. Kendra had already interviewed 2 other women who'd come forward after seeing my case in the public filings, victims of mentoring programs my mother used to run. The more she dug, the more patterns emerged. And now, she had footage. Hard proof. I didn't give Kendra permission to publish my full name, but I did agree to sit down for an anonymous interview. Voice modulated, face blurred, facts confirmed. She called the story The Caretaker Complex, when concern becomes control. Within hours of the article going live, the church my mother attended issued a public statement saying they were reviewing claims related to one of their mental health volunteers. The nonprofit where she'd volunteered for 6 years, they suspended her pending investigation. She wasn't arrested, not yet, but her pedestal had cracked. And for someone like her, that was worse than prison. Ryan called me the next morning. "Did you see her Facebook?" he asked, practically breathless. I logged in. Her page, once filled with inspirational quotes and filtered selfies, had gone dark. No posts. No comments. But people were talking, not tagging, just talking. She always seemed off with the girls she worked with. I remember when she called her daughter a walking liability at the school fundraiser. Weird vibe. She once told me mental illness was an excuse. Said her daughter would have been fine if she wasn't so stubborn. None of it surprised me. But it still stung, like watching a puppet show where the strings finally snapped. But the real blow didn't land until the police called. They had enough to pursue charges, not just for harassment and mail tampering, but for medical impersonation and financial fraud, the forgery on the trust account, verified. The illegal access to my medical records, documented. The tampering of prescriptions, a gray area, but one they were now actively investigating. "Do you want to press charges?" the officer asked. I sat in silence. Because part of me, after everything, still wanted to crawl under the weight of guilt and conditioning. The part of me that still heard her voice whispering, "Don't make things harder than they need to be, Allie." But then I remembered the pills, the shaking, the lost time, the way she'd nearly convinced me that my life didn't belong to me. "Yes," I said clearly. "I want to press charges." That night, I went through the last of the storage boxes from the house. Things I hadn't looked at in years. Journals, photos, random bits of childhood clutter. At the bottom of one was a letter. Unopened, addressed. To me, it was from my father. Dated 2 months before he died, Allie. "I know you're still young, but if you ever find this, I want you to know something. You're not broken. You're not unstable. You're strong. You see things others ignore. That's a gift, not a flaw. Don't let anyone, especially family, ever tell you otherwise. This world will try to define you. Fight for your definition. Love always, Dad." I broke down sobbing, not because I was sad, but because for the first time, I believed him. The next step wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. I applied for my own apartment. No shared leases, no ghost names. I opened a solo bank account. I legally changed my emergency contact. I even requested access to see the full reports of the mental health treatments she had signed me into, without my knowledge. Some of it made me sick to read, but I needed to, because I wasn't just healing anymore. I was rebuilding, and she could no longer follow me where I was going. They say narcissists don't crumble. They implode. By the time the civil case reached trial, Sandra Temple wasn't the woman who once commanded rooms with a smile and a story. She arrived late, dressed down, no lipstick, no layered pearls or carefully chosen cross necklace, just brittle hands and hollow eyes. Even her lawyer looked tired. The courtroom wasn't full, but it didn't need to be. A few reporters sat in the back. A quiet camera crew with legal clearance documented the trial for a future segment on psychological coercion in familial relationships. I didn't flinch when I saw her. Not anymore. We didn't even have to go nuclear. Elena said the facts spoke louder than anger ever could. The testimony from doctors. The audio. The pill analysis. The forensic accounting showing tens of thousands in stolen funds. The emotional witness accounts from Sharon Bowers, her daughter, Dr. Brenner. And the video, the final blow. That footage of her creeping up to my mailbox in the middle of the night, vandalizing the last place I could call my own. She denied it for months, until the moment we played it in court. Then silence. No spin, no tears. Just shame. The first honest emotion I'd ever seen cross her face. The verdict. Guilty of financial fraud, medical proxy abuse, forgery, civil liability for emotional and psychological harm. Her punishment, 6 months of house arrest, full repayment of the stolen funds, a lifetime no-contact order, and mandatory psychological evaluation under court supervision. No, she didn't go to prison. But she went somewhere worse, for her. A world where no one believed her anymore, where her mask didn't fit, where her voice no longer worked. 6 months. Later, I stood in my new apartment, barefoot on hardwood floors that I paid for. There were plants in the windows. A dog curled on the rug, coffee on the stove. I wasn't rich, or famous, or healed in every way, but I was free, and I was building something no one could touch. I'd started a blog under a pseudonym, The Pill Drawer, stories of coercion, gaslighting, medical manipulation, the quiet wars waged in living rooms and bathrooms and therapy sessions no one talks about. The first post? She told me I was crazy, then switched my medication. It went viral in 3 days. Comments flooded in, emails, from survivors, people who hadn't had the language until they read it. I'd found my voice and given it to others. One night, I looked in the mirror, really looked, and I didn't see her anymore. Not in my eyes, not in my posture, not in the voice that once apologized for simply existing. I saw a woman she never expected me to become. Independent, clear-minded, resilient, not her victim, not her project, not her shadow, just me, Allie Temple, survivor, storyteller, no longer silenced.